Hi, my name is Ian, and today I'll be showing you how to replace the fan in a Nintendo Switch. So on the back, you're going to have 4 screws. Those will be Y screws, so you'll need a special bit for that. Once those are removed, you'll have Phillips underneath the kickstand. The rest of the screws will be Phillips. Next, you'll have 2 on the bottom, 1 on either side of the charging port. After that, you will have a screw on either side, and those are in the middle of the Joy-Con rails. The rest of the screws in the rails can be left, just the middle screw needs to be removed on either side. Then you're going to want to pry up the back. Just be careful, you don't want to break any of the plastic tabs that hold it in. Once that's off, next you'll have the SD card slot. There is 1 screw, and there is a connector, so just be careful. Here you'll see that I actually use a spudger to kind of lightly pry it up, and that'll come right off. You can set it to the side. And then we're going to be removing the metal plate here. And there are 6 screws after removing the SD card slot that are holding in that metal shield. Once those are removed, again, I'll just go back with the spudger to kind of nicely pry that up. And you will see there is thermal paste on that shield. That's actually for the heat pipe. I leave that thermal paste. Don't mess around with it. Then you're going to want to use the spudger to disconnect the battery. It's very important, just so you don't do any damage to the board. You don't want any electricity running through the board, so you go ahead and disconnect that. And there are 3 screws holding on the heatsink and the heat pipe. Once those are removed, you can pry up. There's going to be a little bit of work that's going to be needed for prying it up, just because there is thermal paste holding that on. So I just kind of move around and do my best not to do any damage here and just slowly pry up each piece. Also, around the fan there, you're going to see that that's got that kind of cloth there, and that is stuck down, so you will need to pry up that cloth. And you may tear the cloth in this scenario. You just do your best to get as much off without tearing it, but you will leave some behind. Now you'll want to get that game card slot to the side, so there is 2 screws holding a little plastic piece there. So you'll take out those 2 screws, and that little plastic piece you can just set to the side. Then there's a ribbon connector. There you're going to want to pry up with the spudger, and then you can just put that game card slot, just flip it kind of over. We're not going to be removing it today, so you can just kind of hang that to the side there. Just get it out of the way. Now you'll have 3 screws holding the fan in place. And then the fan has a ribbon cable. So with that, just be careful. You'll want to kind of pry up the little piece of plastic that's holding it in. And once you get that popped up, the ribbon cable will just release and you can just pull that fan right out. Now be aware, for when you're putting the new fan in, there are 3 small rubber grommets that you need to put in there for anti-vibration for the fan. And they won't typically come with the replacement fan, so you need to take those out of the existing fan and put those in place. But here you'll see I'm just putting that ribbon cable of the new fan back into that connection. And I'll just use the spudger to kind of slide that in and push that in, and then put down the plastic piece to hold it in place. And here you'll see where I'm putting those grommets in. Basically, you just pinch them from either side and they'll just push right in. And those are for anti-vibration. The screws just go right in the middle of those. Then putting the screws back in for the new fan. And now we're just pretty much going in reverse. So now we'll go with the game card slot, and that just kind of pops into place with that connector. Then we'll put the plastic piece back on. And again, there's 2 screws for that plastic piece, and there's 1 screw for the game card slot. Now I'm just cleaning off the thermal paste that was on the CPU. And for that, I'm just using a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol. And you just want to try and get it as clean as you possibly can. It's not going to be perfect, but just try and get as much of that thermal paste off as you can. And you'll see I also cleaned the heatsink. And then I actually reapplied new thermal paste onto the heatsink itself. And you'll go ahead and just put that into place. And then there's the 3 screws for the heatsink and heat pipe. And then we'll go ahead and put the shield back on. And the 6 screws that are in the metal shield. And then once those 6 screws are in, you've got your SD card. And this is just going to push into place there. There's a little connector. And then you've got 1 screw to hold that in. Then you can put the back plate on. And there's just those little clips at the top and bottom, so you're going to want to just get that to clip into place. You've got the screw underneath the kickstand. These screws on either side. 2 screws on the bottom. And then sometimes you need to make a little adjustments, just kind of click those plastic tabs into place if they aren't completely into place. And now I'm going to put those 4 Y screws into the back plate there. And then once that's done, you're all set. Switch is back in place. Go ahead and just turn it on, test it out, make sure that fan is running. Now the fan itself won't run right away. You will need to put some load. So typically what I will do is run a game like Zelda, Breath of the Wild. That uses a lot of processing power. That's going to be your best way to test out to make sure that fan's running.